Welcome back to the Self-Care Zone podcast, and today we're jumping back into the Leaders of Leaders series. I'm here with Rajan Durarajen. Welcome, Rajan.
Thank you very much, Brad.
So, mate, can I start? How you got into this industry and what prompted you to get into the NDIS space?
There's no short answer to that question. But if I were to give you a little bit of history, I did spend about close to 2 decades in the corporate world.
Mm-hmm.
And that was back home in my home country. And there came a turning point in our life. We were having, my second kid was born. My first was 5 years old. We were living quite a comfortable life, working for a multinational. They pay you quite well. So everything was quite comfortable, but everything was on autopilot.
Yeah.
But we also realized that looking forward, there was still something missing in our lives. We didn't really know quite what that was. As for our kids and all that, we were thinking about, being a citizen in my country and being raised as a minority, we still were discriminated. So we will never be entitled to everything that a citizen, gets. And we also saw the cost of living escalating crazily, the quality of education going down. There's so many reasons out there that was prompting us to want to try to make a move. But also deep inside, we were both having corporate jobs, me and my wife, and we wanted something different. We just didn't know what that was.
Mm-hmm.
So we decided to make this shift, to migrate, and because we've traveled quite a bit extensively, we were quite sure of where we wanted to go and start a new life. And so we actually gave up our jobs and we came to Australia not having any jobs with 2 young kids, and we were really prepared to even start from the bottom to discover life again. One of the other things that requires us to actually make that physical shift, because we tried to make small changes back home, but we found that sometimes the environment sort of, stops you from trying to make those shifts. Like, for instance, we try to get into better sleeping habits, better diets and all that. But, we find people calling us late at night because that's the way it is, back home. And, we've got 24/7 restaurants everywhere. And we're eating at all hours and, all kinds of stuff. So it was really difficult to shift, even though we wanted to, because the environment was such and it was not supporting us. So we thought, why not change and go to a new environment? And then we can have a clean slate and start again, but obviously we were much older and it was a bit riskier. But we decided to do it because it was important enough for us.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, so we both moved into community sort of roles. My wife went into Red Cross and I was in council for a short while. But I think my life sort of changed around in council because I had a person that I worked very closely with, and he was visually impaired.
Mm-hmm.
And he used to talk to me about the NDIS. And that was a time the NDIS was getting into Parliament to get signed off and all that. And he was so excited, and his excitement got me excited to really go research about the NDIS. And that was back in Adelaide. And, we have got lived experience. We've got a brother-in-law who had Down syndrome. He's passed now.
Yep.
But so it was every time, it was always an area that we were very passionate about, but never really thought so much to get into. But it sort of opened my eyes about that. The other thing that was really important that I didn't feel in the corporate world was that we were delivering results, but I didn't feel like I was satisfied, like I didn't feel like I was making that impact, and I didn't feel that return of that the impact of the work that I was doing, and so I decided, let's do this. Let's do this. It sounds exciting. So I applied to work in the NDIs in their headquarters in Geelong, and I got accepted. And they were willing to, move my family from Adelaide over to Melbourne and start a job there. And so that's how it all started.
That's been a big journey.
It has been a big journey because, I was, even the role in corporate, I was a kind of a regional manager for the Greater Asia and all that. But my first job in Australia was organizing training for people and setting up tables and chairs. So, it was very humbling in that sense. And I was prepared to do anything to really start that journey again and discover myself, and for both of us, for me and my wife, and try to make it work this time on what we wanted to do and be passionate about pursuing those initiatives. It would be nice if you had thought about that 20 years earlier, but life's life, and the journey takes you where and we were happy to experience that journey. So that's sort of how it's started.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, and that shift from going from like the top of the level corporate down to setting up tables and chairs for training, that can take a big hit on our emotional and our well-being as well.
Well, you can say it, ego, yes, definitely.
Yeah, yeah,
It did take a big hit, but so that's why I think it's not for everyone.
yeah,
But you see, everything in life is like, if you're giving up on something, then are you actually getting something more in return? And you got to decide that for yourself, right? And that's the decision making thing that I had gone through, and it was important enough for me to do it, and I was not so. I was brought up in a very small, not poor to medium income family. So, and the biggest thing our family taught us was about humility. It was always there. It was important. And so I found that the corporate world had changed me quite a bit. And I needed to find myself again. And so that journey really helped me to take away a lot of that ego and everything, and really go through a journey where I can discover myself again. So that was really important. So yes, it's not for everyone, because I know sometimes it's tough, to take a hit like that, especially if you work so hard to get to where you are and to start the journey again. But it was something I was willing to do, and I'm happy I did it.
Yeah, awesome. So then, having that hit to your ego, and that can impact on your well-being. How do you then balance that, the well-being and your ego, and the starting life in a new country with 2 kids, and how do you balance all that?
Well, I looking back, I can tell you a story, but going through it, it was tough. It was tough. It was tough. It was really, really tough.
Yeah,
See, one thing that we did is we knew that if we were to move a country and the face of challenges, that we will come back.
yeah,
So what we did is we sold everything back home so that we will not have that option. So we had to make it work.
yeah,
We had to make it. You can call this whatever you want, and we've been called names for it, but that was what we did. There's no plan B, so we had to make it work. And so the many times, me and my wife would sit and say, hey, did we make the right choice? This is getting very tough. Should we go back? Because jobs are not there, and how are we going to survive? We have 2 young kids. My daughter was going to starting primary. My son was 2 years old, and we came in as temporary residents, so we didn't have Centrelink, no Medicare. We were paying like daycare fee of $65 a day so that he could go and socialize with other kids. So there's tons of things that were happening in our life, and then we had our parents back home worried about what was going on with us and the kids, and at the time, and honestly, there are times we had to lie to them and tell them, hey, we've got jobs, we are okay, we're doing okay. But, the reality was not. But, that's what we did. And there was a few important things that happened, right?
Yep.
So I went for a course in TAFE, and this is about helping us find jobs, as new migrants to the country. There was such a course those days. And I met a bunch of people who were also migrants from a lot of other countries, and we were all going through the same sort of a journey. Now, one of the things that were happening is that there was a lot of negative energy, because we said, Australia said that, they need skilled migrants, and, they gave us this job, and now that we are here, where are the jobs? There are no jobs, so why did the country do this? And so we were going into this negative spiral, and we found that that kind of a negative spiral was not good for us, not good for our psyche, and so on. So we sort of had to step away and decide to start mixing with more positive minded people. And that's what we did. We did that. It was really important for us, and started to connect with people in Australia who were willing to help us, through our journey, give us some tips, or maybe even help us through, job interviews, or try to get us to understand how things work. And, believe it or not, we came across so many of those people that we're still in touch today. So many of them who have helped us through that journey, preparing for an interview. When I was going for a job interview, people who said, we've got an extra car, you're not you don't have transport. Come, you can take the car, use it until you get yourself sort of settled. Just people who are just, like, so, people that I've never seen before in my life, because you never get exposed to all these things. Were just wonderful, great people. And then that was important to us because it talked to us about a part that we were missing in life, about the social connections, about who we are as people, about serving others, about community, and a lot of other things. So we made it.
Mm.
Slowly. That's how we picked ourselves up, and we don't look back anymore. And it was quite interesting. The first trip back home was after 3 years,
Yeah.
and then we thought, oh, fantastic. Our kids are going to be really happy, go back seas. But our kids, after a week, they said, Mom, Dad, when are we going back home? So they don't identify themselves anymore as, country.
Yeah.
Australia is their home now, and they got their friends here, and they started their life here. So it's quite different,
Mm.
So the journey started there, So it was tough, but with the support of a lot of people, having that positive mindset, and being around people who are positive in that sense really helped through that journey.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
you mentioned before about putting those boundaries in place around, removing yourself from that negative environment and finding those, the positive people that were willing to help you out, even though they didn't know you from a bar of soap. Like there's, putting that work in. How important do you see that putting the boundaries in place to protect yourself?
We were lucky that we were able to recognize it,
Yeah.
because the other option is you can go down the spiral yourself.
Mm.
But we knew that we had to make this work,
Yeah.
right? We see the way that we understood it is that if we are in a negative space, uh, anywhere that we go in any conversation we have, people can feel the negativity because
Mm.
we can feel it from other people. And
Yeah.
so we know that we must be emanating that negative energy to others as well. And then we started to think, are we also emanating this negative energy when we go for job interviews? Could we possibly be doing that?
Mm.
So we needed to not just pretend to be in a positive space, but we needed to live in a
Yeah.
positive mindset. So that's how our thinking was then, right?
Yeah.
And I think it was really important for us to do that. And so that's where it got us,
Yeah.
right? And the thing about people being so selfless, it taught us so much about what we needed to do for others
Mm.
that we were not doing. It's
Yeah.
almost like paying it forward, right? I mean, if you're receiving this as a gift coming to you and helping you through your most difficult times, there's nothing that you can do to return a favor to these people because they're selfless, but you can
Yeah.
do that for others.
Yeah. And I think that's a big shift that, we can do all the work on ourselves. But it's when we give back after we put the work in, that's when we get the biggest hit into, not so much the ego, but our self-esteem.
Yes, you're 100% right.
I think there's a difference between ego and self-esteem.
Go
In
ahead,
that,
tell
that
me.
I think the ego is more of projecting how good we are.
Hmm.
It's about putting on a front and showing, like putting on a mask sort of thing and presenting to the world, where self-esteem is more internal. It's, I feel good about myself because I did this. I feel this, not I am this.
Hmm. I think you're absolutely right. And, if I were to just expand on that a little bit, as now that, for the position that I'm in and leading an organization, I think one of the important aspects for me is the ability to be vulnerable,
Yeah.
you know. And being vulnerable is being able to tell people that I don't know the answer, and if I made a mistake, to say that I apologize, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
and if I made a mistake, to say I'm going to do better the next time,
Mm.
right? And I think that's important, because as a leader, you don't necessarily always have the answers to everything. And there are going to be many moments that we're going to make those mistakes,
Yeah.
like anyone else.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. It's about having that, that culture of when you can go, hang on, I got this wrong. It's, can you go, like, it's almost like leadership is projected as being this polished front that you're putting on, but internally you're going, oh, did I get that right? Did I make the right decision? Am I going in the right decision, in the right direction with my business?
Yeah. Something that stayed with me throughout my life, and I go by it all the time. So you see, there's a lot of things people can take from you. They can take your money away, they can take, anything that they want away from you. But there are two things they can't take away from you unless you give it to them, and that's your integrity and your credibility.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the only thing that I safeguard myself, throughout my journey, whether in my previous, corporate experience or moving a country and starting here, that I kept very close to my heart, because that defines who I am. That's the values and the principles that have led my life, and I refuse to give that away, because that's important. That's who I am. That's what's made me to what I am.
Yeah.
So that's important for me.
Yeah, for sure. You're saying before that you're a leader in business now in the NDIS space.
Yeah.
Do you think that leaders have the responsibility to like embed self-care as part of the company?
100%, without a doubt. I think we shouldn't just think about self-care as self-care alone. There's there's a bigger question around, and I think it's around culture. It's culture is critical for me, and it's the number one thing. And I want to say something in this topic, because when I was leading in the corporate world, one of my forte was around turning around dysfunctional team and organizational restructure.
Mm-hmm.
And so I worked in different parts of one big organization, whether it was in shared services or warehousing or whatever it is, And so very different industries, different way of working, and different challenges, but then when I started to analyze, what was I really doing? How was I actually turning around these teams? I knew that I had a bit of that talent and that forte to do that, but what was I really doing? And I found that eventually it's about just instilling organizational culture, a good organizational culture. It was never about process. It was never about systems.
Yeah.
You could go in and put the best process and systems, but if they don't stand upon a good foundation of culture, it's not going to withstand, for that company to be a great company. So I knew that, and until today, it's not changed. It's not changed.
Yeah.
So if you have that really good foundation of, building a good organizational culture, but then not just thinking that it will stay, but sustaining it.
Yeah.
Right. And then anything that you put on top of it will nurture, will grow, will be okay.
Yeah.
Right. And challenges will come and go, but we will take it in our strides, and we can overcome these things. So that's my belief until today. And I talk a lot about it in our organization. Whether we are small or big, there's not so much we can do in terms of tools for organizational measurement, but that's okay. But as long as you understand what that is, we can do it,
Yeah.
And we don't talk about it enough, because I think, when we say organizational culture, people don't know what that is, because you can't, if you can't measure it, organizational leader says, well, can't see it really, what it is. So if you can't touch it, you can't feel it, then let's not do it, because we don't know what that is. But honestly, I think in today's world, there are tools that can measure it if you want to.
Yeah.
But more importantly, I mean, we've heard many people say, I've left that organization because the culture is toxic. So you obviously can feel, and when it's toxic. So obviously when it's great, right?
Yeah.
So it is a feeling, and it's an important thing. It's an important feeling to have for people to come to work every day, because they're happy to come. They're happy to come because it's great teamwork, and there's good respect, there's good trust and in the organization. So these are outcomes that you're going to have when you have a good culture. So I'm not pretending here saying that we have a great culture, but I know that we continue to invest in the culture, and we need to sustain that sort of a culture. And a few things that tell me that culture is great is things like turnover, right? I
Yeah.
mean, we've got desired and undesired turnover, and our undesired turnover in this organization, I've been here for 5 years now. It's only been about 3 people,
Yeah.
right? And
That's
we
massive.
have
That,
grown from 30 to 73 today.
okay.
So that's an important indicator for us. A
Mm.
lot of our staff that we've got in as disability support workers have been referred by other staff
Yeah.
members. So we've got husband and wives working here. We've got a staff member who's getting his stepmom to come work for us as well. So we've got really that sort of a camaraderie that's happening within the organization, which is fantastic. And then the other thing is, one of our intake pipelines is to placement students who've done course, Cert 4, Cert 3, and we've worked with the RTOs to say, hey, look out for those who are passionate about this industry, and then you send them to us, and let them do their placement here, because, if their job is really good and they are here for the right reasons, we'll give them employment. And we've employed a lot of people through placement because they come here and they experience our culture and they just feel this is the place to be.
Mm.
And even for our clients and prospect clients or sport coordinators, we don't talk so much to promote our business. You won't hear our organizational name being fleshed out in a lot of places. We just say, come over, come and have a look, come and see our sales, come and see how they operate. You don't even have to give us advance notice. Walk in, you surprise us. If our residents are happy to have you as a guest, come in and have a look, see what's going on. So that's what we take our pride we take pride on, because we believe that once we invest in that culture, everything else works well. Someone says, there was an author of a book, I can't remember, and he said this: if you dissect an organization to its core, what you find is relationships.
Yeah.
And I think that's really true in many ways, and I think it's our job to invest in our staff, because it's what really makes the magic happen.
Mm.
And that's where sort of our journey is, and we're hoping to do a lot more in that and have the right people in the organization to help us do it.
Mm. Yeah, well, it sounds like you've got a really great understanding of that culture, and then, the easy to note, like you're trained to pick up on what those indicators are of when things aren't quite going right, to then go, okay, we need to invest money in this. And I think that's a good thing that you're doing, is that you're willing to invest the money in the culture, where a lot of businesses are going, oh, well, I can't afford that. I don't have the funds to invest to spend on training.
Hmm.
Where,
Yeah,
by changing that wording of spending money or to investing in money, investing in the culture, you're having that different change of mind, and you're seeing it from a different perspective as well.
yeah. I think that's really important to do. But having said that, also, you have to create an environment where you're able to have that dialogue, and one of the things that's really important is to have an organization that's not hierarchical, where people think that people leaders are untouchable and you can't reach out. You just have to take that hierarchy away
Yeah.
and have conversations and continue to have conversations at all levels of the organization. And people are in the organization are comfortable enough to come and tell me if I'm doing a bad job on something.
Mm. Yeah.
And I welcome that, because that's important, because that's the only way that I'll know and do something about things. So that's sort of a dialogue, and up and down. And if people assume that we're doing some practice that's not fair, then we need to have that discussion and explain to them what is actually behind, what are the principles. The lack of knowledge sometimes would raise confusion and people making their own assumptions as to what's happening. And usually that dialogue helps to sort of alleviate a lot of these concerns, and so those kind of open discussions are really important. But I think the most important thing, and especially in an environment like ours as an NDIS registered provider, is teamwork. Everything is done in teams. Everything
Mm.
is, I mean, our predominant focus is sales, right? And the staff that come into a sale is working an 8-hour shift, and then the next person is coming in, and that support that we provide to our clients has to be consistent. So they need to really work together as a team to ensure that consistency is there, right? And if you don't have that consistency, you're not going to see results.
Yep.
You're not going to see the results. So it's a very simple principle. It's not rocket science. It's not complex. The issue could be complex, but the solutions are quite simple. If you know, and it's difficult to do. Yes.
Yeah.
But it can
very
be done.
difficult.
It can be done.
Yeah. I think too, in that sometimes we see, okay, it's a difficult situation. It requires a difficult solution. And we just disregard the simple solution that may be that golden key that unlocks everything.
100%.
So then how do we identify that? How do we go, like, how do we separate that big solution from the small solution and go, this is what's needed?
I think it's priorities. We shouldn't select a problem not doing or not resolving an issue because it seems complex or it seems difficult. I think we need to look at the problems or the issues in terms of the impact that's going to create if it's resolved.
Yeah.
Right. And if the impact is going to be far reaching and the impact is going to be really important for the organization, then yes, then invest the time in it. Irrelevant of how difficult it is, you got to do it. Right. Yeah. I mean, we also are guided by the 80-20 rule. A lot of times in a small business, right, you want to put 20% of the effort to get 80% of the outcomes or the results, so you got to prioritize some of the things, but never. I think it's really important not to run away from the big issues because we think it's complex. A lot of times they are not. I'm coming from a high-tech company in the corporate life, right?
Yeah.
And even there we were trained, and it was a fantastic training ground. The company that I worked for it's superb. And even then they taught us, like, complex problems not necessarily always have complex issues, complex solutions. They don't. Yeah. They only have if you want to think of it in a very complicated way. But otherwise you can approach it quite simple. And the important thing of simple solutions is easy for people to adapt and change.
Yeah.
Right. And the more complex it is, the solution you think of, the less favorable that it's going to the change is going to happen, because people might be just more resistant to it.
Yeah. And as people, we don't like change.
Oh, 100%.
So by having that complex change, you get pushback a lot more of going, I can't do that. I don't want that change. Where if you have that simple solution, people are like, hang on, I can see myself doing that. Let's go ahead and do that.
Yep. Exactly.
So then you're saying before that you've removed that hierarchy from the business, in that, a support worker can come to you and say, hey, you've dropped the ball here.
Yep.
How do you then, going back to that ego conversation, like, is it easy to drop the ego of going, well, I'm the boss, this is the decision I've made, whereas, seeing from a different perspective, you're going, hang on, did I do that?
I don't think that ever happens in our organization, or at least it's not the choice of words I use at all. I think positional power is something that you keep in a lockbox and use it when you need to. But you be very careful when you want to use it.
Yeah.
Right. I think a lot of times we need to understand that we are all coming together, and we've got different skill sets and we've got different roles, and we all need to work together to deliver the end results. Every one of us, irrelevant of what our roles. And so we might be paid or remunerated differently. We might have different positions, different titles, and we might have an organizational structure, because just to help us in terms of who takes accountability for what. But we don't have to be, well, I use this word very strongly, and I mean it. We don't have to be slaves of a structure.
Yeah.
Right. And I've seen that happen a lot when I was in the corporate world, and that's really the impediment that stops in building a really good constructive culture. And if everyone can just think about how you approach each other, oh, Rajan, you have this role, so you might be in a position to help me, so here's a problem for you. Now I don't always take, if people try to throw the monkey back on my back, I don't always just take it, and I'll say, all right, I'll keep it there in a neutral space, and ask them also, what are you doing about it?
Yeah.
What's your contribution, and what can I do to help? So it becomes sort of a joint responsibility,
Yeah.
right?
I think too, part of that, that going from the corporate to like, that management style of corporate, I think that's coming into the community services sector where it doesn't work that well.
Mm. That's true. There are a lot of elements of that I've learned in the corporate that's actually been very useful in community sector, and I think that we don't do enough. One of it is analytics, business analytics. I don't see so much of an appetite here. But it's really important for me. Like, for instance, I want to see patterns in the organization.
Yeah.
Like, I want to see if someone's late to work all the time because shifts start at a certain time. Clients are expecting you to be there. They're paying you to be there. And a support worker that's leaving has to leave on time and shouldn't be waiting for you to come 20 minutes late. And so sometimes we look at the data to see that is this person, is it a one-off? Because it happens, you got traffic jams and all that. But is it a pattern? Right? Is it happening all the time? And then should we have a chat, a discussion with this person, or what's going on, and what can we do to help? So analytics is not big, but we need to start having an appetite for it because it gives us a lot of information about things that staff won't tell you. They're not going to tell you that, this person has always been late and, just irritated with it. They're not. They're going to just keep it in. But that has an profound impact on your culture. So business analytics, some things, there are things. What I'm trying to make a point is that a lot of things that we've been trained in corporate that actually are useful in community, but it is a different way of doing work, because here the sense of gratification is almost immediate. The work that you do, you can see the impact. You walk into the sills and see the clients and you see, I can see the change. Right, I don't meet them every day, but I might be there once in a month or once in 2 months, and I can see things changing. And so that's happiness there. I mean, that excites me because I can see, the impact of the work that the team's doing. And that's important. Yeah.
So then, if you can feel that happiness and that culture shift in the sill, are you also doing something like a happiness survey with the staff to see how things are going with them as well?
Not enough.
Okay.
Not enough. So we in our organization, we have an external HR person, consultant at the moment, and we are looking at trying to get someone internal on a full time. We just have a lot of work that we want to do in terms of people, and right now a lot of that work is divided up with a lot of the existing leaders. And there's not enough really good focus on it, and there's so much I want to do. But the way that the organization is growing is that we have a plan as we grow, as we get the clientele and we hit our certain targets, then we can invite a lot more people or management roles into the organizations and start working on other things. So it's a gradual thing. And so I'm, to be honest, very unhappy that I don't have someone who's focused on, when I say a HR person, there are two aspects of the job. HR has a transactional aspect of their job, but they also have a transformational aspect of their job. Right. And that's the area that I want focus on, is the transformational aspect of HR that I think needs to have some centralization and someone driving it. And so not happy with it, but but it is what it is. And as the organization grows and we get to a position where we can afford that role, that's definitely going to happen.
Yeah, I think too, HR can often be seen as more of that transactional and, focusing more on that side and not so much on that transformational side.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. And I've seen it a lot in Australia, especially. I'm not saying it's bad or good or anything. I think Fairworks here is pretty strong. So a lot of people tend to kind of resonate towards trying to, tick all those boxes and get everything done in that aspect. but I do see organization as well that's focused on transformational.
Mm.
And in my corporate life, I think transformational HR was huge, was
Yeah.
massive. So, and that's how I've sort of built my mindset around human resource, and whether it's organizational development, whether it's organizational culture and everything. As leaders in my organization, I had to do a 360 survey every 3 months,
Mm.
to look at whether I was doing well as a leader
Yeah.
for the organization. So it's massive. It's
Yeah.
massive, So because it comes with behavior change, and behavior change is the toughest thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And it's hard too because, behaviors can be a result of previous companies that we've worked for and the culture that we've taken with us. Culture is not something that we leave behind when we leave a company.
Yeah.
A little part of that culture comes with us, and whether that's a good culture or a bad culture. But I think too, like we change our behaviors based on the culture of where we are.
Yeah.
So if we can, go into a positive culture, we're likely to then change behaviors positively, but it's going to be a slow change. It's like we need to go back to those boundaries and go, okay, we need to protect ourselves, but also let some of that in. And that's why I talk about boundaries being gates, not walls,
Yeah.
in that we have that decision to open that gate and let others in, let people, let cultures in, but then also close that gate and say, no, I need to protect myself in this situation.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. And I also think we have a lot more choice in it than we actually think, but I don't think we think about it enough though. Like, see, when I left the corporate world and was coming here to find work, one of the things I really feared is that I was molded through an organizational culture for almost 2 decades, and so I was thinking in a certain way, I was working in a certain way, and I don't know whether that was what the jobs here required me to do. So I was very careful about how I was presenting myself, because I wanted to adapt. I wanted to know what was happening here. So there was a balance scale, sort of like trying to understand the organization and how they function so I can adapt to it. But there were also some non-negotiables
Yeah.
in that, right? That was important for me as a person. And so then I had to decide, all right, I was working here. Am I working here because I love working here? Or am I working here because I need to put food on the table? And if it's food on the table, then that's fine, but that's a decision I've made. And I know it was a stepping stone. And I know at some point I was going to move away to find something that's going to be more of a place that I want to be at. So these are important decisions, but I think we have a choice
Yeah.
along the way, and we have to make those choices because we have to make sure that they align with your sort of values and what's important to you to maintain your own self-care and mental health and so on. Yeah, and those choices, I think we do to some extent, and sometimes the job requires us to, but it requires us to be there. Let me give you an example, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can't work a 9 to 5 job. I can't. I'm a CEO of a company, and you think, yeah, 9 to 5. No, it doesn't work for me. In my corporate life, I've never worked a 9 to 5 job. I was never required to clock in, clock out. The only times in my life that I had to clock in was when I was in government, right?
Yep.
And that flexibility is important for me because in my role, I can't say that I'm going to do all my thinking from 9 to 5. It
Yeah.
doesn't work. It just doesn't
Yeah.
work for me. But when I started with the organization, that's how it is until I build the trust and until I build the respect. And then I'm able to negotiate. If I'm producing results, then now let's talk about what's going to work for me.
Mm.
Right. So today I don't work 9 to 5. For me, sleep is important. So I sleep
Yep.
early, right? But I wake up very early because that's the best time for me to do my thinking, like 4, 5 o'clock in the morning. It's crazy hours, I know. And I try not to email anyone at that time, but sometimes an email will slip through, but a lot of times I don't. But, that's the best time for me to do numbers and actually do a lot of thinking because it helps me.
Yeah.
Right. Then I get to work and see people if I have to, or working from home. But usually around 2, 3 o'clock, I'm exhausted.
Mm.
Right. So I take a power nap or go out for a walk or go and do some shopping or whatever it is. I'm not working. Right. And if the day finishes there, it finishes there.
Yep.
Or, I put in some work later part of the evening or whatever, but I have that flexibility because my job role allows it,
Yeah.
right? And same with the people that my senior leaders as well, that flexibility, what works for you. For some people, 9 to 5 is really important because they want to clock out at 5 and then they have other things that they want to do and it works for them. And that's completely okay. And for others, the balance is different,
Yeah.
right? But if we've got obligations. Like I've got meetings, and meetings don't happen at 7 p.m. They happen at the 9 to 5 window. So I have to make those. So I know,
Yeah.
and I don't compromise those things. But within those, I can work my flexibility and make sure that I have that balance. So that's really important. So those are the sort of roles I seek out for, because it's sort of a win-win for me. But at the end of the day, results it's what it is. As long as you're delivering the results, people are quite happy to be flexible.
Yeah.
Organizations are happy to be flexible.
Yeah. I think that there seems to be a focus on, in many roles, of that 9 to 5 role. But then also too, you've got to think that over, the last 30 years, you've had both parents now having to go to work, but they've still got kids that got to be picked up from school and dropped off. They've got after school activities. They've got, you know, other commitments outside of work that they're not able to meet because of how rigid and structured work is. And you've got to get these 9 to 5 hours.
Yeah.
Where I think there needs to be a shift in, like you said, if the results are being met, have that flexibility to work the hours that you need to meet these outside responsibilities as well.
100%. And there's some rules that don't allow it. Like if you're in a manufacturing plant and you're working with making products or whatever it is, and you got to be there at that time. Or even as a disability support worker, you're with the client, you're supporting the client from certain time to certain time, you probably don't have that much flexibility. So it really depends on the role, and and to shift away from thinking everything with boundaries, just try to take that boundaries away and see results. Can I achieve those same results and the outcomes in a better way, and how can I do that? As long as those outcomes are achieved, then how you get there, we can discuss.
Yeah. And I think it all comes back to what you said before in that company culture, in that, if you've got that possibility of flexibility and you're meeting those targets, it's having that safe culture of going, hang on, can I go to my manager and say, look, I've got my targets. Can I be a bit more flexible? It's having that safe environment to have that conversation to start with.
Yeah, no, 100%. And it has to start with first building the trust and respect.
Yeah.
Like when I started with the organizations that I did as an NDIS provider, that's not something I negotiate in day one.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
won't get you a job.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it is, organizations have structure. So it's a 9 to 5 job. You go in 9 to 5, but as you work there, you build that trust, you build that respect with your bosses, and you show them how you're delivering results, and I'm very passionate about the job that I do.
Yeah.
I'm very invested into the job. I'm very result oriented. So I know I'll achieve whatever I set out to do. And then if I do, then when people come and say, oh, you're fantastic, thank you very much, this is great, I say, all right, let's talk about something that's going to help me as well through
Yeah.
this process. And a lot of times, often in my case, the bosses have actually come to me and asked me, what can we do to help you? And so that opens a conversation.
Yeah.
And then we see what is that sort of flexibility going to do, because the job is demanding. You can't take it, you can't take that away, but definitely there's ways that we can make it workable.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like stress. Like you can't remove stress, but you can build your resilience. You can put things in place to help manage that stress.
100%. You're right.
Yeah. So I've got one question I'd like to finish off with,
Okay.
and that is, what's the biggest tip that you'd give someone that might be listening when it comes to their self-care?
I believe we all should look at ourselves as part of a community and not just a single person. Now,
Yeah.
let me give you this example. You know, every day we are actually doing something for others. Every day
Mm.
we are. Even a simple task of going to the market, buying fruits and vegetable, right? What we're doing is actually helping a farmer somewhere,
Mm.
you know. And some of us do something more in terms of direct services, like in our sector, in disability, right? We are actually supporting a person to become more independent, to build skills, and it's very rewarding.
Mm.
I think it's really important to tell ourselves that we are worth it.
Yeah.
We are worth the investment in ourselves, not just others.
Mm.
I think we really have to unconsciously and consciously process that in our minds so that our body starts to behave in that way. Because with that mindset of we are worth it, it drives a lot of commitment and accountability
Yeah.
that we will do something about ourselves,
Mm.
but the mind needs to shift first,
Yeah.
right? And in our industry, it's very easy to get lost about just thinking about others and helping others without really taking care of ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. The number of times I've seen, support workers who were dedicated and would go the extra mile and then, not see themselves as valuable. They wouldn't value themselves. They would, put other people first, put their team first, but not see themselves valuable enough to go, hang on, I actually need to take today off. And that led to, support workers, myself included, go through burnout
Yeah,
multiple times.
yeah,
And, when we're in that situation, we can't help ourselves and we can't help the loved ones around us, like our family, because we're focused on what we're going through. We're dependent on other people.
100%. We have a value. One of the values of one of the four values we have is hopeful.
Mm.
And very often you don't see this word hopeful in a lot of values of organizations. And I was very keen to have that as a value in our organization. And I think if you Google hopeful, one of the definitions of it is inspiring optimism.
Yeah.
It's very powerful. It's
Yeah.
absolutely powerful. And it's just not about inspiring optimism in the people that we support, but it's about inspiring optimism in the people that we work with
Yeah.
as well, because gone are the days where we can think about, leave your home issues at home, this is work. It doesn't happen. It
Not
just
anymore,
doesn't
no.
happen, So we are who we are, and everyone needs to be supported. And I think it's easier being supported as a team so that you don't feel like we're going through this journey alone.
Mm. I think it's also important to be hopeful in ourselves.
Hmm.
Yes, in other people and those that we support, but also in ourselves.
I agree.
Yeah. Awesome. So thanks for your time, Rajan. I'm absolutely keen to have you back on. This is a great conversation. We'll have to organize another one.
Thank you very much, Brett. You have a good
Awesome.
weekend. You take care.
Thank you. You too. And
Bye bye.
remember, if you can't look after yourselves first, you can't look after other people.